Well, howdy ho, good neighbor. Today, we're flying high above Oakland, California. That's right, we're heading back to this familiar sight, the glass plant, or should I say, the Oakland Recycling Glass Plant number 068. Let's give it a proper name. Now, I keep saying 068. For some reason, I've seen that plant number somewhere. And it is, well, let's just call this 000, because this thing is getting subtracted as we speak. If you've been driving down the 880 freeway, you can see that this elephant is being eaten. If that is even a word, eaten. But as I come in on that old familiar pan around, you will see this is what's left. Wow. Absolutely nothing is left on the east side of that glass plant. It is completely gone. And there is that big crater in the ground that I've seen so many times, but now it's like a big swimming pool, practically 10 feet deep. So there you go, the Oakland glass plant in all its glory. Now, to me, it seems like they keep this thing pretty dust controlled nowadays. They've got a lot of water on this job, and even in the air. So like I've said before, it's hard for me to get the drone down low over there where the misters are, but look at all that scrap metal. That's a lot of money to a lot of people, and boy, did it take a lot of work to get it that clean and ready to recycle. Well, there is one of the big tractors doing its best to get through that building. And he is, like I've said before, precision and precise. It seems like they don't really pull on anything because they don't want a collapse on their equipment. Now this person right here, he's got a job all unique and on its own. He takes those specialized big pieces of metal. You can see that pile he's riding next to. That's all flat iron. So he dumped that in the flat iron pile. So each pile has its own, I want to say, unique purpose. It looked like that pile in front of us is dark metal. Maybe a contaminated metal. Or maybe a rebar. That's what it looks like, that dark metal. So after this building comes down, I've said it before, where that man is driving, all this concrete has to be busted out. But there's that little guy making another trip with that flat metal. So his job is never done when half this job is flat. This man, he picks through that rebar and he makes smaller piles into bigger piles. And it just amazes me how they can pick through there so precisely. It was a beautiful day to fly, so that's why we got out here today. When the wind is non-existent and all the machinery is running, well, that makes for some great videos, and I am blessed to have you guys come along with me on these. Boy, what should we call this? History in the making adventures. That's right. There's a good look of what's inside there. Can you see how much metal that man has? That's like 6 stories of metal that could fall on him. So like I said, everything is nice and precise. But look at that. Isn't that a sight to see? I wish I had one of those drones you could fly down in there, but I don't think the contractor would like that too much. But here you go. I got the old zoom lens out for us, and see how close I can see what he's picking on. But there you go. That's what it looks like in there. You can see where this used to be floors of people working in there. So I'd always wonder what it was like to see this glass plant in full operation. But there you go. Like I said, I don't think he can drive down in there because it's kind of wet with water underneath there. But he's picking at something there. You see that? That's how you eat an elephant. That's what he's doing. There's that flat metal that man was moving around. So he definitely just reaches that claw in there and scoops a little out at a time. And it's almost like him when he snags something, he doesn't really want to pull it. He releases it and takes a little bit out of a time. I think that's the smart thing to do, is to take a little at a time. And it's almost like he's excited to open up a new hole each bite. But there's a good chunk of that flat iron. That must weigh about, oh my goodness, I would say a ton by itself, but I don't know. Couple 100 pounds, I do believe, but that's a lot of flat iron up there. You could see the floors are flat iron and I-beams. And that green paint, remember we were talking about that green paint? If you look hard enough, you can see some green paint from the olden days. They used that green paint back in the 60s and 70s a lot. But yeah, it is kind of exciting to see each operator doing their own thing. But there's that mister that really does keep me from flying low, but it's doing a good job of keeping the dust down. And with a building like this, it's got a lot of dust. You can see the way he tosses that big old heavy metal. That stuff has some weight to it. Well, it looks almost like a movie set to me. Now that small little tank right there at the bottom of your screen, they still have yet to move that. And they still have all this dirt and, I want to say, contaminated soil. That's why they have it covered up. Believe it or not, when you have soil covered up with plastic, that's contaminated, so they don't want that blowing over to the neighbor's house. But you can see a lot of this rust and all this dust. Well, of course, that's going to blow. But yeah, that is a pretty good chunk right there. And the reason I do document that pile of metal is because that pile of metal gets bigger in future videos. So not only am I documenting the building, but I'm documenting this metal pile getting bigger and bigger. And boy, is it getting bigger by the day, because if you think about it, half of this building, well, maybe even 80% of this building is metal. In the other buildings that they used to have, that they tore down here, a lot of that was wood. So this is what you call a gold mine for scrap metal. They hit the mother lode. The mother lode, they got a gold mine. So all that thin metal, well, that's not worth too much. The thin metal will come down easy, but it's not worth a lot. It's those big I-beams and all that copper. And those are the money makers. So, yeah, that thing's probably about 6 stories deep. I think they should probably make a big swimming pool, but they won't do that. But look at that. Yeah, that's at least a story down. So that thing was deep under the ground. So when this glass plant was in full function, I would say it was probably at least 10 stories from top to bottom. Now, if I was a kid, boy, would I like to get in there and do some experimenting and but I better just stay out of that mindset, because you can get hurt here. So this is a good thing. This is probably why they are tearing it down, because homeless people and kids were wandering around in there. And I say that just because of experience around here. There was no way a security guard can continue to walk these acres. I do believe it was 22 acres. So when this thing was abandoned, I could just imagine the people getting in there and wandering around. And they were getting in there because there was spray paint everywhere. So I got a little bit of destruction here. You can see them pulling. And who's going to win? The building or the equipment? I don't know. But that mister kept getting on my camera lens, and I wanted to get that perfect shot, but the mister kept clouding my view, as they say. But he was getting something. He was definitely eating away at the metal, as they say. But nothing was falling as quick as I wanted it to. And as soon as they get a pile in that ground, well, they got to get it out of the ground. So this man's job, 8 hours a day, is to just scoop this material out of the hole. So if you want to see what's in the glass recycling plant, well, nothing was very recognizable to me. Usually I see fire sprinkler pipe or some Vic couplings or maybe a old water heater, but nothing in that pile makes any kind of sense to me. But I think that would probably be one of the... Oh, it looks like he hit the wall a little bit there. I was going to say maybe the easiest job, but maybe it's not, because you can't see what you're picking up. But I couldn't get enough of this guy doing a little bit of demo work. You know, that fascinates me every time to see the destruction. And man, it just, a little by little, he just eats away at it. Now, if I was in that machinery, I think I would probably swing it a little bit side to side, but maybe you can't do that. Maybe you'd want to do like a little baseball bat move and knock some of that stuff around, loosen it up a little. But maybe that's what he's doing there. It looks like he's pushing up on some stuff. So he knows what he's doing. I'm just trying to tell him what to do. But if I was him, I'd be going side to side using that bucket as a baseball bat. Knock down some beams like a golf club. But you know that equipment's not made to be swung around like a baseball bat. So he's doing it right. I need to be quiet. But if I was him, but I'm not. So the thing about that guy working on top, like I said, it's a ballet move. They got to watch each other. That guy's got to drop a pile, and then that other guy can come down and grab a pile. So the guy on the ground has to be careful not to swing over too fast and disrupt this guy. Now, sometimes it's like fishing. It looks like he just ended up with a whole bunch of nothing there, a whole bunch of water. Let's see what he can pick up this time. Yeah, it's a hit or miss. Sometimes you get a full bucket full of slop, and look at nothing. That must be disappointing. I think that's what he has to do. That's why you have so many piles, because sometimes you bring up a whole bunch of mud. I bet you he doesn't like that. But that's the money in there. You see all those big old thick I-beams? That's the money. And that old thin stuff on the top, well, that's not going to bring in any money. That's probably more labor cost than material earnings. And I'm sure that's the way they look at it, is material cost compared to material earnings. I don't know. It sure would be hard to bid a job like this, because when you're trying to outbid a competitor, well, you gotta, how do you even bid a job like this? How many days and how many men? And do you just take the job, say, hey, we'll do it for free, we just want what kind of metal comes out of it? I don't know how they come up with that. I'm sure they don't do it for free. And like my boss always says, nothing's for free. So when people say, hey, I'll give it to you for free, well, really, nothing's for free. Somebody's paying for it. Yeah, that's the society we live in, where everybody wants something for free, but we got to realize that nothing's for free. Everybody thinks that they get something for free, but somehow people are going to pay for it. In the end, somebody pays. Nothing's for free. We know that. Well, there you go. This is what's left of the old Oakland recycling glass plant. I would say that thing's probably 3/4 gone, or 3/4 left. I was never good at math. But you tell me, they've got all that big, huge part done. That is amazing. Well, it's good to see that progress is being made. I had to jerk my camera around a little because I thought I heard a helicopter. So you got to be careful when you're flying the drones. You can't, if you see a helicopter, you got to get down low. Drones and helicopters are drones and planes. They don't mix. Well, is that some fire sprinkler pipe? I don't know. I always try to find a little fire sprinkler pipe in all that metal, believe it or not. I'm still looking for fire sprinkler pipe. I don't even know why they would even have fire sprinklers in all of that mess. Could you imagine trying to run a piece of fire sprinkler pipe through that? I don't know. But that is a spider web of metal, that's for sure. It looks like the birds are still living there, or a couple of them. All right, well, I think we're going to end this video right about here. Well, it's never here, you know that. You know I got to fly back to where I started from. But before I do, this is that last little loop like I always take, but something's missing. Usually there's a building right here I'm flying over, but not today. They've totally got rid of it. Usually I fly over that building and come right back through here, and it is all gone. So congratulations to the inner city demolition. That's what you got left right there, that big tin building. And this contraption, whatever this is in front of us, that's going to be fun to take down. And that little bit left. And 3 smokestacks, which, well, that'll be fun to watch. Well, as always, I want to thank you for coming along with me on these Oakland glass plant demolition adventures. You know the drill. Peace, love, and all that hippie jazz. Bye-bye, everybody.